going to record. Well, good afternoon. And you are?
John F. Welty.
John, how do you spell your name?
Well, of course, John is J, capital John, middle initial F for Frederick, and last name is Welty, capital Welty.
Well, it's great to see you, John. Now, today's date is February 26, 2025. And let's start off with what year, where were you born and in what year?
Well, I was born in Bucyrus, Ohio, and that's about 60, 80 miles from Cleveland, Ohio. And I was born in September 2nd, 1935.
And that makes you how old?
I'm just a few months away from 90.
Whee!
Whoa, big 90.
Good job. Good accomplishment. Well, and what cities have you lived in, and what are your thoughts about those cities, the main cities?
Well, obviously, I lived as a child, as a baby, and a few years in Bucyrus, Ohio. And we moved from there when I was about 5 years old. We moved to Mansfield, Ohio. And then I lived most of my teenage life and going through high school in Ashtabula, Ohio. After the military, I went to my wife and I in Columbus, Ohio. And then, of course, in 1962, we moved to Santa Barbara, California for 9 months, and then moved to Carpinteria for the rest of this time.
Okay. Well, what do you think about growing up in Ohio? Was that a good
Well,
thing?
yes. Growing up in Ohio was absolutely wonderful. During the years I grew up, from 1935 to graduating from high school in 1953, those were years where, as you would probably imagine, the Midwest and all your friends, you knew everybody. You got on the bus, you knew 90% of the people on the bus. You went to school with everybody, and it was good. What did I think of it? I felt protected. I felt like I had nothing to worry about. And those were important things at the time, the teachers and the churches, and just having all these friends around you. You felt safe. So what did I think about the town itself? The town was similar to our Santa Barbara and Carpinteria area, where 50% of the people were immigrants. They were Italians, there were Germans, there was Finns from Finland and Denmark. So everybody had a place in this community. It was wonderful.
Where
So
did your ancestors come from?
my ancestors actually came to the Bucyrus, Ohio area from Switzerland. And they came and they were married. Both lived in the same village, my grandmother and my grandfather, and they were married in New York and moved to Ohio. And we're farmers. So it's interesting about the Midwest. It just, your roots go really deep, and I really felt surrounded, and that's why when I came back from the Army, I went to Columbus, Ohio. And
Okay.
Columbus, Ohio was a metropolitan. At the time I came back in 1954, I beg your pardon, in 1957, the community in Columbus has changed from a farm community area to a metropolitan of 1 million, and was continuing to grow at that time. Changed altogether different over a period of time.
Well, what city or village were your parents in Switzerland?
Town near Zurich, and the name is Link, Lenk, and today they're not. It's not not a farm community, it's a ski resort. So very, very expensive place to go visit.
Now, you mentioned your wife. What's her name and how did you meet her and what did you like about her?
Well, I met my wife in 1957 in Germany. I was on the border, patrolling the border in a little town there called Coburg, Germany. And I was able to, I was a sergeant, I was able to leave the camp for a weekend pass. And I went into the town of Coburg, and it was Fasching, which is what we call the New Orleans Mardi Gras time. And in this little ice cream shop, they had a little band. And so my friend and I went down. My friend was named Gunther Migo. He spoke perfect German. I didn't speak any German at that time. And we went into this little ice cream shop and we heard the music. We went downstairs to the music. And lo and behold, I sat down and we ordered a drink. And I looked across the dance floor, and there was Vera with two other girls. I fell in love with her the minute I looked at her. I got up to ask her to dance. I asked her, does Darf ich bitten? That's German for will you dance with me? And she responded with a no, nine. It took me 3 times to asking before she danced with me. And then before the evening was over, I coerced her into meeting with me again in Coburg. And I got a chance to go and meet her and her family. And that began a romance of 1 year that was absolutely wonderful. And we were then married in Germany. 3 times we were married there.
What year about did you meet her in?
I met her in 57, 1957. And then we, of course, came back to the States. And we were married 3 times, once by the courts, one other one by the justice of peace and that was required, and then beg your pardon, justice of peace and courts, and then I had to be married by the American military, and then we were married in a church, the Lutheran church there in town. So I was married 3 times in Germany.
That's something. Well, what year did you meet her in, and was this just after the war?
Yeah, it was 1957.
Right, okay.
I went over there to occupy. I was given the duty assignment to occupy Germany, and we were occupying Germany before they had their freedom, and we of course had a lot of responsibility along the German-Czech border, and so that's. And then I met her at the end of my tour.
How did the Germans feel towards you
Uh,
or towards
we,
America?
for years, they're very respectful because we were talking to a lot of the old timers and what have you. I felt a little bit of distancing from the younger people when I went there because I didn't speak German. So I rectified that by learning the language. And I found that things were different when I spoke German to the soldiers from the war and my relatives and what have you. So to answer your question, I actually talked to a friend of mine on the phone the other day about the voting and everything in Germany. And I asked him about, my feelings towards the things that changed for over the period of 15 years. And his comment was, he knew of nobody that didn't have respect for the actual American. They weren't too happy with the government here, but they were not holding that against the businessmen of the community.
Was your wife's family sympathetic to the Nazis?
My father-in-law served in Russia in the Russian campaign. It was in a Russian prison camp until 1957. 57 was when he came home. and really in bad shape.
But
I beg your pardon, 1940 something.
47, okay,
Yes.
47. And was there any issue of they were first against the Americans, but they came around to be for the Americans, or?
You could not get the soldiers, I could not get the soldiers to talk about the war at all at any social gathering. And I didn't speak the language at that time, but after I studied German and I was able to converse with people the last 10, 15 years, they opened up a lot. I learned a lot about what happened in Germany, and I went to German school for a while, but my wife went with me to Germany and in a town called Bamberg, a town similar to Santa Barbara. And I went to the language school there, and we learned a lot about the war. It was a mandatory class, and even the good parts and the bad parts we learned about.
Well, what are some of the things you learned about the war that you could pass on to future generations?
Well, the good part was all the people that still were sympathetic. The things about people like sewing groups, women's sewing groups that were against the war and did everything they could to help people that were being mistreated. That's just one example. The other example on the other side of the coin was that when the war was over and the Germans had no more ability to fight, they had no weapons to fight, and the Russians were coming and what have you. A lot of the younger men went home because they couldn't fight anymore, and the war was lost. But when they came home, the Gestapo was still there, and they began hanging these young men in town square because Hitler had decreed fight to the death. And they looked upon the people that couldn't fight anymore coming home as deserters. And the good part is that a lot of these groups saved a lot of these young people by hiding them and what have you. That's just some of the things that I learned. And the communists were absolutely not liked at all, and both sides. So I know that was a hard one to understand, but um, I feel very blessed to having had the opportunity not only to marry Vera, but to have an opportunity to meet all their relatives and before they passed away, and all the people that worked so hard to change their lifestyle after the war.
Did Vera have a problem being from a German? Was she of German descent or Swiss descent?
She's from German descent. She
So
was born in Berlin. She was born in Berlin.
did she get any discrimination? I know my parents, who were Jewish, after the war wouldn't buy any German products and that type of thing. But how did Vera fare?
Uh, she, was pretty young during the war. Uh, she felt a lot of sadness about the American English bombers killing her grandparents with bombs, and but I've never seen a real big problem on that. It's just a reality that occurred. And with her dad coming home, he was in terrible, terrible shape. Her and her mother did not like the war, but they were forced to abide by the rules and regulations that were set by them. And from the time we were married and going on the troop ship, coming here to America, and her coming to America, she spoke guarded English that she had learned. So we had, through our first few years of marriage, the language she improved immensely. It's a very intelligent way. And but she never has had anybody showing discrimination toward her of any. Once in a great while, we'll go to a restaurant here in Carpinteria where a person maybe from Holland or someplace had a lot to drink, and they hear us speaking German, and that brings back some really bad memories. And get a little out of line, but in both cases that happened, the other people with them brought them back to reality. You know, got what the, recognizing that myself having German family and Vera coming from Germany, we had nothing to do with, hurting their family. And, so,
Well, would you think that time heals in a way? Because I think now Americans feel good about Germans. They're our
oh
allies.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. Time has healed immensely. The closeness of the political arena recognizes that. No question about it. Larry, I can't tell you how sad I was when COVID hit because we couldn't go back to Germany. We couldn't travel back because of our age. Our age was against us, and the amount of risk involved at that time. We just felt it wasn't. We're thinking about going back this year for the first time in 5 years.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, to change the subject some, what did you want to do for a job when you were a kid, and what did you end up doing?
Well, when I was a kid, you want to remember that I was a oldest of 7 children. And my dad was a product of Swiss parents from the old school. And my dad was taken out of high school or grade school at 6th grade and forced to go back to the ranch and work since his older brother left the ranch. And all he had was six sisters. And the rule of thumb was the ranch was always to have the male there working. Well, when you only had 2 males in the whole family of 9, and the one male, the oldest male left, my dad was the only male left. My grandfather went down and got him out of school in the 6th grade, took him home to work, and that's what he had to do. He had to work to the ranch and not go to school. So I had to work in the family businesses that my dad had.
And what type of ranch was it?
Well, it was in a ranch. And we went to Ohio, to Ashtabula, Ohio, from Bucyrus, Ohio. My dad was in the milk business.
Hmm.
He was he actually worked in the supply of ice cream and milk and things like that, the dairy products. He, of course, left the ranch when he was old enough, and that's what he got into. Had his own company in Bucyrus, Ohio. And when I was 6 years old, I think that's when we moved from Bucyrus to Ashtabula. And that's when he had a manager of a dairy plant. So he had the dairy plant, and for a while he ran that. And then 5 or 6 years after doing that, he started his own dairy store and bakery. So from that point on, my mother was always very ill. And so being the oldest, I was always at home taking care of kids or taking care of her part-time, going to school. And then after school, I would go to work at the bakery and the soda shop. And so I really didn't, during my younger years, have a goal of work that was already planned out for me till I went to the Army. So when I was in high school, I think was the closest I can go to answer your question. I, at one time, wanted to be involved in the Lutheran church work. When I was a teenager, I really liked that, being able to work in the church and have work with kids in choirs and do and administrative. And I even talked to the pastor about going to college at the Lutheran school, et cetera, et cetera. But that kind of faded. And then I had to go back to my original thought process was the last 3 years of my high school, I elected to work and to study in a vocation shop towards a degree and preparedness to go to a tool and die shop and work in a tool and die shop. They were in short supply, and I thought, boy, that would be great. So after high school, you know, my dream was okay. I went to the tool and die shop, found out I didn't like it after a year of opening a shop and cleaning up the shop and being the apprentice of the day. Then I decided, well, I'm going to work in a plastic place. I didn't like that. I work in a corrugated plant. I didn't like that. So that's when I decided the Army. Went to the Army, came out of the Army. What happened? Met Allstate. They seen me and wanted to hire me. I decided to take a chance. 54 years later, I retired from Allstate.
Allstate Insurance. And what did you do?
1962, I started with Allstate in 1958 in a brand new office in Columbus, Ohio. And I worked there. I was one of the top agents there. And then I decided, you know, I'm going to go to California. Everybody wanted to go to California, but nobody went. I decided to go. So Vera and I decided. And so we went to California and we arrived here on June 20th, 1962. And went in Santa Barbara for 7 months, couldn't afford to be there. And went to Carpinteria, and we were working for the Trevelyan family. And we were managing property for them and working at Allstate. I worked at Allstate during the day. My wife ran a little store during the day. We slept in the little store. I worked in the Arco station on Vineyard Avenue at night. And those were the days of getting it together and making our life in Carpinteria.
Hmm.
You know where Baker Square is?
Baker Square, is that near
You know where Aliso School?
Yeah.
Linda Apartments?
Yeah.
That used to be Baker Square. There used to be a little store there, and we lived there. Bear and I slept on a couch thing there, and the kids slept in the back room. That's how but it was a way of life. We didn't have too much. Nobody did in Carpinteria at that time. And so to answer your question, very simply, I didn't have many plans. They were all set out for me. And when I came back, I found out that sales was what I really loved. I had 54 years of working for Allstate, forming my flour company, buying Bill Baker's bakery in the bakery area. And my sales technique was absolutely welcomed by the general public because I never at one time pushed anything on anybody. I always felt I am their answer to a need that they have, and I would honestly approach that need with all gusto that I had in the insurance business. I had almost 2,000 customers. I tell you, I enjoyed every one of them, and every one of them got the very best that I could give them in my career. And the bakery, we saved the bakery from going under in Carpenter in Ojai. It was ready to be to go out of business. We bought the bakery. It was another 10 years that business thrived for that community. And then we, of course, sold it, and that's history. And the flour business, started that from scratch, on the phone every day. I loved every bit of it, Lauren. I would never change anything there. And all this time, on every one of these moves, I had the greatest partner in the world helping me, and that's my wife, Vera. I couldn't have done any of this stuff without her. Here's a gal that was an introvert. And at times when we lived in Carpinteria in that little gas station store, she went out and sold Vivian Woodard most of the time for months. We only had food from that money that she made.
She sold what?
Vivian Woodard Cosmetics.
Mhm.
And she got to the point where the whole female community, Hispanic community, opened their arms to her. We were the only non-Hispanics living in that community. And so Vera would teach them all how to cook German food, and they would teach her how to cook Mexican food. And she had this beautiful, high quality cosmetics, and they just opened their arms to her. And a lot of the non-Hispanics in the community also. And she was no longer an introvert, I tell you.
Times changed her
Time
situation.
changed, yes.
Yeah. So you said you were a top agent. What did you like about sales, and what do you think makes for a good salesperson?
I liked it because I got to meet people, and I tried to meet them on their own ground. And I would be able to review their products that they had. And if I couldn't improve on them, I would tell them. They would never be a mystery. I had a certain amount of education that I learned, and I learned it well. I went to school and the whole bit, but I liked meeting people. I liked the challenge of really taking a look at the family. I never wrote insurance normally in the office. I always went out to their home and got to meet them and the family. I got to know what they needed. Then I would take a look at what they had. Then we would sit down over the kitchen table and just say, here's what I see. Where you're possible to get a lawsuit and lose things, and here's how you can save money in this way. I really enjoyed that. Never thought about what I was going to make. Money took care of itself.
Hmm.
Money. I never once ever went into a home and said, "Oh boy, I'm going to make a bunch of money." I went into that home knowing full well I had a big responsibility, and that was to definitely provide my my learning skills to make their life better and easier and safer. Same way with the flower company. I started cold just by calling farmers in the Midwest and talking to farmers. I said, "What flower company do you know, or do you know anybody at any of these flower companies around you?" "Oh yeah, I know Joe. I know Harry. I know him." I said, "Well, it's been nice talking to you. I got your name, from the farm book here, and appreciate you telling me who these people are." "Oh, no problem." I said, "Do you mind if I use your name that I talk with you?" "No." So I'd call these guys at the produce place and in the different places in New York and Jersey and Boston and all over the place. And every time the same thing. What have you got to sell?" I said, I don't have anything to sell you right now. I want to send you a sample of what we're doing and what we're growing here in Carpinteria. If you like it, we can talk about you paying for it. If you don't like it, please accept it as a gift. I never had anybody not pay for it. And I had people call me back and say, "Could you send me some more of that every week?" So
And who were you calling? Other farmers or
no,
distributors?
wholesale flower people.
Uh-huh.
Uh, most all your allied florists, uh, all there are just tons of different flower companies. Boston Market, Flower Market, Miami Flower Market, and I just would go up and down the coast. I'd start calling these different places when I got their names. I'd start calling them about 2 o'clock in the morning because it was 5 o'clock there.
Hmm.
And all flower gardens start at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so I'd start calling there, and then I'd work my way back through the Midwest. And of course, I had friends in Ohio that referred me to friends in other places. And we grew ourselves to one of the largest flower growers in um, our area for baby's breath and cut flowers.
I've made a certain amount of cold calls in my life, which I haven't really enjoyed doing. But what is your advice for being? Well, I guess you have to make a certain amount of cold calls to get anywhere. And what's your advice about how to go about that?
I, I started out in my sales career in doing nothing but cold calls. We didn't have the Allstate Insurance didn't have any Sears stores in Columbus. We didn't have any, so I would call often. I'd just say, "Mr. Jones there," and the wife would answer, "Well, yeah, he's right here. Just a moment." And when you come on the phone, I say, "I appreciate you taking the call, Mr. Jones. I just want you to know I'm John Welty. I'm down here on High Street in a new office, and I don't want you to be thinking I'm doing anything other than just wanting to introduce myself. And I'm just wondering if there's any chance in the world that when your auto insurance comes up for renewal, that you might consider letting me take a look at it and see what we can do a better job for you." And that usually broke the ice. And he recognized that I was no threat. I was trying to do something that might better his lifestyle or save him money. But you've got to introduce yourself in such a manner. The high-powered salespeople that come on the phone right now these days, they try to trick you into giving you something free and all that stuff. Well, you gotta be a little bit more personable about it and recognize that the person isn't going to be slamming the phone down. I don't think I've ever had anybody slam the phone on me.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, those are some good lessons to others. And by the way, I'm hoping with these recordings that your family members will benefit and future family members and friends.
Oh
And
yeah. I don't mind telling you any of these things,
but tell me, what other lessons have you learned in life that you can pass on?
Oh golly. The first one is, you get into a funny situation, stressful situation with anybody. For heaven's sakes, count to 10. Guard yourself jumping out at them, answering the problem with another problem. I've always found that a little hard to do, but I finally learned to do it. And that is whenever there was a stress situation, take your time. It'll solve itself if you just don't accelerate it. So that's one of the things. I would say the other thing is making sure that you got a plan on what you want to do and how you do it. And share that plan with your wife and family. So many times I wish I would have done that when I was younger. And I finally learned to do it in my later years.
And why is that important?
Well, it's important from a standpoint that suppose they don't agree with you and you go ahead without talking it over, then you've considered you've got a problem, right? You've created a problem. If you get a chance of talking it over ahead of time, you might learn something.
You might benefit from their input, huh?
Yes, yes. And so, that is that to me, I think is probably one of the most important things. Um, I, I let me put it this way. I've learned as long as you have the communication going, I learned to do it my way. I had a banker come with me one day and he rode in a field with me and he said to me, Welty, how did you possibly do all this? How did you get this? How did you get this land? How did you do all it? And I said, I just did it my way. I took a look at it and he said, but it was flooded. It wasn't worth anything. I said, but I saw something different. And after investigating and talking to the people and what have you, I found it was a good purchase. And he said, it sure was. And he said, I don't know how in the world you've seen that. And I said, well, if you've got a goal and you look at all different ways to get it done, but you don't have to do it the way other people did it. You might have a better way if you just do it your way.
And part of it is doing the research to see what makes sense.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. Not that you have to buy not that you have to buy the research. You know, uh, uh, another thing I think is probably really important is some of the sayings my dad used to tell me. And he said, whatever you're going to do, for heaven's sakes, don't go rowing your boat upstream. And you think about that for a minute, it's got a lot of understanding there. And he also mentioned to me something that's pretty basic, and that was, don't ever lie. Don't ever cheat. Do the things that's right. And when you're wrong, you'll know you're wrong. And if you're wrong, make it right.
Hmm.
So
And,
these are some of the things that are.
and admit that you were wrong.
Pardon me?
Is it important to admit when you're wrong to yourself or
It's very important. I give you a little benefit of history on that. I value friendship very much so, and I value my wife very much. With my wife, I have to so many times say, I'm really sorry. I'm just gone about it the wrong way. You don't stay married 68 years and be perfect. You're not perfect. So I don't like to leave anything undone like that when I'm wrong. But
nice?
with friends, it's even more fanatical with me. With a wife, it's easy to say you're sorry because you're with her. But a friend, you do something wrong and you part, I can't go home and go to bed. I've got to get in my car and go see that person and make it right. And if I'm wrong, I'm telling you I'm wrong, or her, I'm wrong. If I've done something wrong, I can't let it. I guess that's why I sleep well. I can't I can't carry a problem around with me. I've got to make sure that I've done everything I can because I recognize that if I'm hurting, that other person's hurting. So for heaven's sakes, I know it's difficult. It's always difficult for me. But I have to tell you, when I get in my car and I go home, or I have an opportunity to go across the room and talk privately to somebody and that I maybe said something wrong or insulted them and didn't mean to, when I walk back to my seat, I feel better about it. It's gone. And I think that's important. And yeah, another lesson I've learned, and I just leave it with this, because it covers so much that I live by. When you have a situation, I don't care if it's buying a house, going on a trip, having a problem with something, wonder where that next opportunity is that you're going to get a check so you can pay this bill or what. I don't care what it is. Take the good Lord with you. You always have a friend. Always. I can't tell you how many times my prayers have been answered.
Nice. Good advice. Um, to switch gears a bit, tell me who are your family members, your kids and or grandkids, and
Oh, okay. Let's see if I can do it all by memory here. Okay. Well, first of all, the matriarch of our family is my wife, Vera, of 68 years. Okay. So we all know that. And I think that I go with her downtown and more people know her, I think, than they know me. So whatever. But let's start off with the oldest, who obviously is. And that's Karen Welty Graff. And her husband, of course, is uh, Lyndall. And they have, well, Karen and Lyndall have one daughter. And her name is Lauren Graff. Penna, P-E-N-A. And she's married to Will Penna. And he's works for the city of in Seattle. And he works for the city there, Parks Department in the theater. Quite talented young man. And Lauren graduated from Cal Lutheran, top student every year. She graduated 3 years ago as a cum laude. Is that correct? Oh boy, I remember that. And she and another young man were the two top students in the whole class for that year. Quite an exceptional young lady. She currently is employed by the city of Ventura. I think it's a welfare department that she's. Well, I messed that up, but she's an executive outside director of donations and what have you. So she's very talented person in what she does. And then we go to my oldest son, John Welty Jr. He's our manager and director of farming in both our ranches, and specialize in most cases all of the avocado divisions and some of the flower divisions. Karen is the basic sales administrative part of our company, and owner, is part owner also. John is,
and I know Karen's also quite involved with the community and very important that way.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's quite talented, and I think John is probably his own man for sure. But knowing John Jr. is an amazing person. I have so many people meeting him because he doesn't really dress conservatively. Got a beard, a lot bigger beard and hair face than I've got, and hair. However, doesn't take you long after you know him to know that he's a mechanic, personified, He he knows plants. He knows he's a very talented guy in agriculture. Just man of all seasons. If you got a problem, he's the guy you call to solve it. I don't care if it's a leaking water heater to why is our roses, don't look good? Or what plant do we plant here? What kind of grass do we plant here? What kind of fertilizer we do here? How do we set up an irrigation program underground? This is John Jr. So he's my second oldest. Third is Alan Welty. Owner of Welty Allstate Insurance in Goleta. Does a fantastic job. He took over where I left off, and has just done a fantastic job. In 1993 is when I kind of turned the insurance business over to him. We were the top agency in Southern California.
Wow.
Profit-wise, customer-wise, everything. And there was one time in my life that I wasn't fourth or fifth in the division sales in Southern California. I was number one. So when I went to Seattle, I walked out the stage with my wife. We were number one with Allstate. I told Alan then, I said, you know what? Can't get any better than that. You get prepared. It'll take a year, but we're going to turn the agency over to you, and you're going to buy it. It'll be yours. And so that's where John Allen is at right now. I have the youngest son is Mark Welty. He lives up in do I have a permission to back up here a minute? Sure. With my son Alan, he has two children. One is Gianna. She goes to North.
Nordoff?
In New York. She goes to college in New York. She's graduating with her doctorate. And from all stretch of imagination, she's in love with New York. So I don't think we're going to get her back here.
Nice.
Her name is Gianna. And so from that standpoint, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. And then, of course, he has a son, Ashton. He's going to UCSB and does tremendous grades. And he's working in a shop in Goleta part-time. But two very nice kids. Now I can jump over to Mark. Mark is the youngest, and he lives in southern about by Sacramento. And it's okay to get nervous, I know.
Yeah, no problem.
Roseville, California.
Okay.
And Mark is an absolute interesting young man. He plays music in part of a church band. He was superintendent of schools there. He worked as as a principal of schools there. He has a tremendous amount of ability of coaching young girls and volleyball and boys basketball. And when he was a principal, he did that for 3 years. And he came to me and said, Dad, I can't hack this anymore. I'm not able to do the things I want to do. I can't go to the church and play in the church band. I can't do it. I can't really do the things I want to do. I'm just solving problems all the time. And I said, well, what do you want to do, Mark? And he says, I want to go back and teach. And I said, you know what? I would support you going back to teach. And he did. And he's so happy now in
Good
what
for
he
you.
does. And he's got three kids, all three boys. Got Kyle, who's a hot shot car salesman. I never would have dreamed it. Good job. Good job. And then we got Timothy going to college there. And getting out of college, he's going to be doing some stuff in the tech field. I've already started. And then Matthew, unbelievable. Kind of Matthew's never been given a lot of the talents that you and I have. Struggles on so many different things, but he actually struggled his own way through high school and got a degree. And it took twice as much work for him to do that than it would have took me to go through high school. And he had a lot of help, and he went out on his own after high school and got his own job, which again, I am absolutely amazed that a firm hired him on the spot over 3 or 4 other applicants. And he's just doing a wonderful job. But when you're handicapped and you overcome it, ooh, makes you almost want to cry, I tell you. Real
Nice.
proud of him. I think I've touched all the kids,
Okay.
except for the kids for John Welty, my oldest son. And I kind of say that for laughs because they were the oldest and what have you. Now John has 3 kids. Sean Welty is a great customer service rep for Angelette here in Carpinteria. Works here in Carpinteria. And if you go into Bank of Montecito, you'll see Ashley Welty. Absolutely spark plug of that particular group. And if you go to Westerly Orchids, you would meet Jenna Welty, one of the greatest designers you'll ever meet. She's just born with it, a flower business. So I think that touches all the kids, the grandkids.
Okay. Well, what a family you have. You must be proud.
I'm very proud.
Are there any family stories that you can think of that when the family gets together, you tell, what about that time? Wasn't that crazy when, or whatever? Any family stories you'd like to share? And if nothing comes to mind, that's fine.
I think when they get together, all the kids or the grandkids, when they get together, I don't see, I'm just trying to think here for a minute. I don't really see them. Maybe one of them might have a beer occasionally, but most of the time it's just sitting there with sodas and whatever, talking about this particular band or this particular famous person and whatever. I'm amazed that they're not involved in anything really serious. It's only about what they have been to and what they have done. And that's always very interesting to me. Or they talk about the trip they just took to Arizona. I don't think that there's anything that I can actually come up with right now that is generic of what is talked about at this point, other than the personal stuff. And when you get that many people together, that's about all you're talking about.
Well, we're about at an hour now, so perhaps just a little bit more.
Okay.
If you could choose how you would be remembered, how would you like to be remembered?
I struggle with a question like that. I came up with, in my opinion, or I would answer this: hardworking, community minded, family man.
Very nice.
I, I'm sorry that I didn't, if I've been too mouthy about everything. But I want to, if we got more 1 minute, I'd like to say something.
Yeah, sure.
Um, just encouragement to everyone, that every male that's going to watch this, and is relish your time, not only with your wife, and respect her and thank her, and because normally speaking, we couldn't do the things we're doing without them. How do I bear a child? How do I even think about doing some of the best meals that she's cooked? How do I do that? You know, those are important things to recognize. And I can't say enough about the fact that it's a two-way street on everything that you're doing with your wife. It's not a one-way street. And relish the time, not only with her, but with the kids. It goes so fast. And if you have a chance, take the time to be a part of their lives. I know it's tough,
Well,
but it's rewarding. Yeah. That's
ec-
all.
okay. Well, great talking with you, and maybe we can talk again some other time and hear more stories. Do I have your permission to share this interview with others?
Sure. You bet your life.
Well, very good. Well, thanks so much, John. Great talking with you.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate this interview.
Well, you've done a lot for the community yourself, Larry. Thank you very much for doing so much for the community. You
Well,
know,
thank you.
I admire you, what you do.
I admire you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to stop recording now.